Welcome to the Kenya Wantamnata Movement podcast. Today we're diving deep into a story that every Kenyan needs to understand, a story about a promise, a betrayal, and a legacy that we are all still living with. We're going to explore the critical years right after independence, looking at what Uhuru was meant to be, and how the dream of freedom was stolen. This isn't just history, it's our story. Let's get started.
So here's how we're going to break it all down. First, we'll look at that incredible promise of freedom that swept across the nation. Then, we'll uncover the system of plunder that was set up to dismantle that dream. After that, we'll talk about the price of truth. What happened to those who dared to speak out? We'll connect it all to the legacy of inequality we see today. And finally, we'll talk about a call for a reckoning. I want you to picture it. It's 1963. The British flag comes down for the last time. There is just this incredible feeling of hope in the air. After decades of brutal struggle, independence, Uhuru, is finally here. And at the very heart of this new beginning was one single, powerful promise that everyone believed in. And that promise was captured in three simple words: Uhuru na mashamba, freedom and land. You see, this wasn't just some political slogan. It was a sacred vow. For the Mau Mau fighters, for ordinary families, this was what they fought for, what they bled for, the dream of reclaiming their ancestral lands, the fertile soil that had been stolen by colonial settlers. This was everything. But almost as soon as the celebrations ended, that beautiful dream began to curdle. The promise was that the land would be returned to the people who fought for it. But the reality? Well, the reality was a gut punch. The land wasn't returned at all. It was sold, and the people buying it weren't the landless freedom fighters. No, they were a brand new, politically connected elite.
So you have to ask, how? How on earth did this happen so quickly? How was the central promise of independence just dismantled? Well, it wasn't an accident. It was a system. And there were specific policies and very powerful people who orchestrated what can only be described as a grand theft of a nation's hope. It was all done under a policy that sounded perfectly reasonable: willing buyer, willing seller. Now, on paper, this sounds fair, right? The new government, with money from the British and the World Bank, would buy land from the settlers and redistribute it. But here was the cruel twist. The Mau Mau veterans, the millions of Kenyans who had been dispossessed, they had no money. So the only willing buyers were the ones with insider access to state-backed loans. The new elite. And who was at the very top of this new food chain? The first president? Jomo Kenyatta himself. He was surrounded by a powerful inner circle, a group that came to be known as the Kiambu Mafia. You had people like Mbu Koinange, Charles Njonjo, Dr. Njoroge Mungai, men who used their new positions of power to acquire unimaginable wealth through these land deals. And let's be crystal clear, the scale of this was breathtaking. Jomo Kenyatta wasn't just passively watching this happen, he was leading it. He used the very power of the state he was given to become the single largest landowner in the entire country. The promise of land for the people quickly became land for the president. I mean, just to give you a sense of the scale we're talking about, the Kenyatta family's private land holdings eventually grew to a size that was comparable to the entire nation of Rwanda. Think about that. While millions of Kenyans were still living as squatters on the land of their ancestors, one family was accumulating a private estate the size of another country. And how did they justify this? Well, President Kenyatta himself gave them the perfect cover story. He would tour the country, look the former freedom fighters in the eye, and tell them to stop expecting handouts. He'd say, "Hakuna cha bure." There is nothing for free. It was a genius, if cynical, move. It reframed this massive looting of national resources as a reward for hard work, and it painted the poor and the landless as lazy for demanding what they were promised. Now, obviously, not everyone just sat back and accepted this. There were brave people who saw this betrayal for what it was and spoke out. But challenging this new powerful order, well, it came with a terrifying price. Let's talk about the voices of dissent and what happened when they were silenced. You see, a chilling pattern started to emerge. In 1965, Gama Pinto, a sharp critic of the government's path, was assassinated. In 1969, the brilliant Tom Mboya, seen by many as a future president, was assassinated. Then, in 1975, another powerful voice was brutally extinguished. Each murder sent a clear, cold message across the country. If you speak up, you will be silenced, permanently. That last voice belonged to a man named Josiah Mwangi Kariuki, or JM, as everyone knew him. And this quote, this was his truth. He said, "Kenya has become a nation of 10 millionaires and 10 million beggars." He saw what was happening with perfect clarity, and he refused to be quiet. He spoke for the millions who felt cheated, and because of that, he was incredibly popular. And that, of course, made him a dangerous threat. In March 1975, his body was found. J.M. Kariuki's murder was a dark turning point. It locked in a culture of fear, a culture of impunity that has echoed through the decades. So now let's look at the long-term fallout. What are the deep, enduring consequences of that original betrayal that Kenya is still wrestling with right now?
Honestly, the legacy has been devastating. Corruption didn't just happen, it became normal, the accepted way of getting things done. The land question was never solved, and to this day, it remains this explosive source of social and political tension. The massive inequality JM warned about became permanent. And maybe worst of all, the old colonial state, the one designed to extract wealth, it was never dismantled. It was just taken over by new bosses who used it for the exact same purpose. Now that's a heavy history to carry, but it is not, and it cannot be, the end of our story. There are powerful calls for a reckoning, a fight for what some are calling a second independence. Let's turn now to what that could look like. So what does a real reckoning involve? Well, it starts with concrete policy changes. Things like a commission that has real teeth, prosecutorial powers to investigate those historical land grabs. It means a progressive land tax to make it expensive to just sit on huge, unproductive tracts of land while others have none. And it means total transparency, a public digital land registry so everyone can see who owns what. But policy is only part of it. The real power for change comes from us, from the people. And that's where modern civic movements come in, and it's why we're here today. A prime example is the Kenya Wantamanatta movement, or KWM, a citizen-led effort to create a brand new conversation about our country's future. And this is where you come in. This is the call to action. The KWM method is simple but powerful. First, visit the platform at www.wantamnatum.com. When you get there, create your account. All 47 counties are listed. Find your county and start posting. Share your ideas, the ones that can change your village, your city, your nation. This is how a movement grows, one honest post at a time. You have to understand, this platform isn't just another news site. It's a people's record. Every comment, every truth you write down, it creates a trail that no spin doctor can ever erase. When you post, you aren't just reacting, you are documenting Kenya as it really is. This quote says it all. History isn't written in offices anymore. It's written here, by you. Now, to fuel this movement, we need to be armed with knowledge. Understanding our past is the key to shaping our future. And that's why KWM offers incredible free resources to educate every single one of us on this critical history. And as a welcome gift for joining the conversation, you can download free ebooks. Seriously, just go to the navigation section on the website, right next to the KWM podcast link, and you'll find your gift. There's We Must Never Forget These Kenyan Heroes, a raw account of those who paid the ultimate price for justice. There's Kenya after Kenyatta, the empire of looters, a look at how this betrayal became policy, and the Betrayal of Uhuru, which covers the very history we're discussing today. Download them, read them, share them. Let them make you angry enough to speak louder. Because the ultimate goal here is nothing less than a second independence. This isn't a fight against a foreign power anymore. This is a struggle for freedom from what you could call our internal colonizers, the systems and the elites who have held onto power by keeping the promise of Uhuru from being fulfilled for everyone. So we're left with this massive question. What does it truly take to reclaim a nation's promise once it's been broken? The answer isn't simple, but it begins with knowledge, with speaking up, and with coming together. Thank you for listening to the Kenya Wantamnatam Movement podcast.